Hello, my name is Danielle LaFrenz, and I'm a fourth and fifth grade art and tag educator. I am completing my thesis at Morningside College over improving student engagement in the fifth grade visual arts class through student-centered learning. The problem that I was looking to solve was on how will the use of student-centered learning through independent studies improve student engagement in the fifth grade visual arts classroom. Through my literature review, I found some long-term effects. Students that are disengaged may find failure to be normal, and they may also have the potential of dropping out. Based on the National Center of Educational Statistics, the dropout rate in 2019 for American Indian and Alaskan Natives ages 16 to 24 were at 9.6%. The Pacific Islanders were at 8%, Hispanics at 7.7%, Black at 5.6%, two or more races at 5.1%, white at 4.1%, and Asians at 1.8%. The first study that I looked to review on improving student engagement was based on differentiated instruction within the gifted classroom. So within this study, the two teachers used a teacher survey, a student survey, and a student behavioral checklist. They determined that their students needed more choice in the classroom, but that differentiated instruction was best for the gifted students. Although differentiated instruction is very important, this scenario of a classroom of gifted students is not as relatable to the visual arts classroom, as they both have different academic gaps. The gifted classroom would have a smaller academic gap, whereas my classrooms have a much larger gap because I service students within the entire school building. The second study reviewed how active learning in the form of movement would improve students' enjoyment, their engagement, learning, and content retention within the math and reading classes. Although these teachers found that engagement was increased, retention was decreased due to that movement. My study is built on a few different theories, but the main focus is the constructivist theory based on active learning. Students within my study will be provided choice and to build on their prior knowledge and create their own study and actively engage within that learning. The study also incorporates Vygotsky's zone of proximal development because I have students of all levels of academics. Some students still need that extra scaffolding to help pull them throughout the study. Garner's multiple intelligences are also incorporated through choice and student interests within the building of their student study through the packet. So the purpose of this is to study, within this study, is to evaluate how active learning, incorporating choice, and student interest would improve engagement in the visual arts classroom. You may have also noticed that the last two studies were not about visual arts. There is very little data that shows engagement within the visual arts classroom, and very little studies done in the visual arts classroom altogether. If the fifth grade visual arts students participate in the student-centered learning intervention, then they will be more engaged, recall content, and actively participate in the learning. So the methods used within this begins with the participants. The participants are within two groups, which is created from the beginning of the school year. My district has 6 fifth grade classes, and 2 of those classes were pulled at random. The students within those classes are placed based on IEPs, needs, behavioral issues, and students that do not work well together based on previous classroom issues. The participants are from a rural Southeast Iowa school with 66% of students being on free and reduced lunch. 34 students are randomly selected from 2 fifth grade classes, ages 10 to 11 years old, 59% being male and 41% are female. 85% are white, 12% black, and 3% are Asian or Pacific Islander. Within this study, the participants were not offered any sort of incentive. The materials that are used are fairly simple. We have Dell Chromebooks within our district that are one-to-one for every student, and they also were to use Schoology. The teacher observation checklist, as you can see here, will allow me to document the different behaviors that are shown, and that is documented based on a tally. Students would be observed every art class, which is every third day. We are on a 3-day rotation, and a date would be placed to ensure that the data is solid throughout this study. The pre and post student surveys are identical within this study, and they are given through Google Forms. They incorporate multiple choice questions, true and false, and short answer. The multiple choice questions have responses of always, often, sometimes, rarely, and never. These are given a point value to be used within my data sets. So always is at 4 points, often at 3 points, sometimes at 2, rarely at 1, and never at 0. The true and false also is at a point value. True is 1 point, false is 0. And as well as the short answer, if they displayed some sort of thoughts of engagement, they were given a point. The independent study packet was what was used for them to build their plan for their independent study. So this is one page of the independent study packet, which is a 12-page packet, and you may see that it does incorporate choices in the materials, the places that they may want to travel to, which was the curriculum that we were using this year. And it also asks students' hobbies and interests here on the right side. Students were also asked to stop in conference with their teacher whenever they saw the stop sign so that I could provide any sort of scaffolding as needed. So during this qualitative study, an A/B research design was used to document student engagement. 6 weeks pre-intervention, the students were observed and documented using the teacher observation checklist. After those 6 weeks, students were given the pre-survey on Google Forms to be completed. The teacher would continue to observe students using the checklist for the next following 6 weeks during the intervention. So to begin the intervention, students needed to complete the independent study packet on Schoology. And then the data from these observation checklists and the teacher surveys were then documented on Google Sheets to be further evaluated. So as you can see from these results, these are displaying the engagement and disengagement during the intervention. Participants were more engaged than disengaged during the study. There were 12 students that showed some sort of disengagement during the study, but 22 students showed to be only engaged based off of the checklist, the teacher observation checklist. So as you can see, 100% were engaged during the independent study. This is pre-intervention and during the intervention to show their engagement levels. So 32% of students' engagement decreased. So they showed that they were not as engaged prior to as they were before the independent study. 9% of students were more engaged during the independent study, but 38% showed improvements on disengagement, which is amazing to see that their disengagement did improve. 5 students remained the same on their engagement, while 18 of the students showed growth in their engagement. So as you can see from this set, this is to show pre and during the intervention disengagement. And there are 16 students that displayed disengaging behaviors before or during the independent study. So of those 16 students, 4 displayed an increase in disengagement during the independent study, whereas the other 12 students moved or showed a decrease in disengagement. So there was 4 students that still became even more disengaged during the independent study. And this is what I believe to be the main issue. If you look at participant 1 and participant 17, they increased in disengagement during the independent study packet, which was done within the first 3 days of the 6 weeks of being observed. So day 1 and day 5 showed a decrease in disengagement and an increase in engagement. Students may show a higher disengagement level during the independent study packet because of the packet at the beginning of a lesson. So I do feel that the packet does seem to be skewing some of the numbers from my own thoughts. As you can see here, these are a set of students' responses from the survey, and 13 students stated that they were most engaged during the independent study. 2 students, as I've quoted here, it says, I would pick out a theme and let the kids be partners with someone, or kids can make a big group to talk about what they're going to make. So this was an idea to make in place of the independent study packet. And then the student says that they would let them do whatever they want in creating it, like drawing or painting for the thing you want them to make. So they would like to use a different set of materials within their, even if they are following a set lesson, they would still want that choice in materials. So this set of data is based off of the survey, and because that information was put into a point value, you may see that the mean increased during the post-intervention, the standard deviation increased, and the t-test determined that the student-centered learning activity was successful. The students were more engaged during that independent study packet. And to further add to this, I had many students during the study that were working outside of the class time. And as you can see from Appendix H, this is an email from a teacher asking if students, when they finish their work early, if I didn't mind if they worked on their art projects. And of course I said that that was no problem at all. And this just showed that students wanted to work on their projects. Students were excited to show their work to their teachers and were excited to get started. And that was shown by when I would come to class, because I'm on a cart, I would push into the classroom and they would already have their things out ready to go. And they were just that excited to get started. So connecting this past research and theory, just as used in other studies, they used like the student surveys and teacher observation checklist to document the data. I also used those items. And one of the studies had suggested on like gifted students to incorporate choice. And that is something that I incorporated within my study, and I found it to be very successful. So active learning allows both the teacher and the students to engage in the learning process and lead on further understanding of the lesson, which is exactly what happened. I found myself learning alongside with the students, and they seemed to really enjoy that. And providing that choice and scaffolding within the lesson was very helpful for the students, as well as incorporating those multiple intelligences by incorporating their interests and needs within that lesson. This is a picture of one of my students' finished products, and this is the results show that in providing choice and guidance within the independent study, visual arts students will be further engaged in their work and have more excitement in the learning. So active learning in the educational strategy that is the best method of incorporating student engagement and collaboration. The constructivist theory holds the students accountable to build on their existing knowledge and interactions. Some of the limitations